Throughout cinematic history, vampires and werewolves have frequently crossed paths on the silver screen in a battle for dominance. Today, we've handpicked a werewolf and vampire film, pitting them against each other in an epic double feature showdown. Join us as we delve into these mesmerizing creature features to determine which genre reigns supreme. Welcome to this episode of Cursed Beings.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to an episode of Cursed Beings with my co-host, Albie.
How's it going, everybody?
Wolfman says hello. Or is it Teen? I can't tell which wolf it is.
This is... I'm not sure which werewolf it is either. It just has a little tag that says Universal Monsters on it.
So he's probably supposed to be Wolfman. He's so cute, though.
I know. He's got an adorable face.
He does have an adorable face.
I have too much stuff on this couch. It's all falling off.
It's okay. It's way better than my festive blinds behind me. So, yeah. So we're back with another episode of Cursed Beings. If you're not familiar, it is a show where Albert puts his hand up and says, "Stop talking." Just kidding. It's a show where one of us will pick a werewolf movie, the other one picks a vampire movie, and then we put them head to head to see which one is better. Pretty much based on pictures, but story and other things as well. Albert made this cool little thing for us. So these are kind of our talking points as we go through the movies. Last time, I think it flowed pretty well doing them, back and forth like that. I think that worked really well. So I think we can do that again if you agree.
I completely agree with that. Okay,
cool. As is tradition, the werewolf movie will go first. I'm really mad at Albert this week. I thought I was picking, I thought I did so good. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be like a good one. And then he wrecked it with his vampire choice. So the movie... And you'll see what I mean in a minute. But the werewolf movie that I picked is the 1994, very strange for who's in this film, Wolf, which is got two of my favorite Batman people in it. It's got Jack Nicholson, who is, the main character of the wolf. And then Michelle Pfeiffer is the other major one in this. So this is, I was trying to find the director. Oh, there we go. It's directed by Mike Nichols. After being bitten by a wolf in rural Vermont, aging book editor Will Randall finds himself full of youthful vigor. Randall then discovers that he's been fired and replaced by a vicious young executive. As Randall struggles to regain his position, he becomes enthralled with Laura Alden, his former boss's daughter. And as increasingly animal-like urges begin to overwhelm him, Randall worries that he may be a werewolf.
Yes.
Yeah. You had seen this one before? No.
I had seen it before, and It had been a long time ago. So there was parts of it I remembered and parts of it I didn't.
Yeah. That's probably true for me too. I hadn't seen it in a really long time either. I know it doesn't get talked about a lot.
So your film or choice it came out in 1994. It's rated R. It's a horror romance, and it's running 2 hours and 5 minutes. So my thought was I needed to find something similar with the same serious tone, and it came out my choice came out in 1994. It's rated R. It's a horror fantasy. And it's running 2 hours and 3 minutes.
That's ridiculous. I'm still mad, but that's crazy.
And it's Interview with a Vampire, directed by Neil Jordan. Story, novel, whatever you want to call it, written by Anne Rice, the amazing Anne Rice. The plot is, in the year 2022, the vampire Louis de Pont du Lac lives in Dubai, and I got us the
That's the show.
the TV show.
I was like, 2022? Is it really in the future?
I was trying to be smooth here and get this up really quick on this little phone, and then I ended up born as an 18th century lord. Louis is now a bicentennial vampire, telling his story to an eager biographer. Suicidal after the death of his family, he meets Lestat, a vampire who persuades him to choose immortality over death and becomes his companion. Eventually, gentle Louis resolves to leave his violent maker, but Lestat guilts him into staying by turning a young girl, whose addition to the family breeds even more conflict. That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm sorry that I chose this one.
Well, interview wins. That's the shortest episode. 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Just kidding.
When I first was thinking about these two films, I honestly thought that it would be a little bit closer for me mentally. Like, in my mind, I kept thinking, I'm putting actors against actors, and Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer are some pretty damn big hitters right there. So the fact that we're putting them against these other actors, what do we got in the interview? Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Kristen Dunst, Christian Slater, Antonio Banderas. And then on the Wolf side, we have Jack Nicholson, Michelle Pfeiffer, James Spader, Christopher Plummer, Richard Jenkins, and Kate Nelligan. So, I mean, there's a lot of good actors on both sides in both films. And I was just thinking, this is going to be kind of a close call. This is going to be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, because they're both great movies. I don't think it's not like whichever one loses is a bad film. They're both really, really good.
Oh, no, movies. Yeah. So just so anybody doesn't get it twisted, we love these films, but we're trying to decide which one's better. And Yeah.
And you know, it's true. And I know we're going to get into all of these details and stuff as we go, but they do also go together well with their times, like with the way that they portray the monsters, because they're not just it's not just this over the top monster in really either one. Like they both have, there's vampire moments, there's werewolf moments, but it's a lot of story driven stuff for both of them. So you did a great job. You're much better at picking double features than I am. The only time I feel like
I appreciate that.
The only time I feel like I nailed it was when you were like werewolves on a train. I was like vampires on a plane. Like I had that, but that was the only one that I feel like I really nailed. The last pick I did for vampires, I just picked because it was something I had never seen before. Like I was trying to find something in the 2000s, like early 2000s rather. I was like, okay, I got to find, it was really difficult, but these are like super complimentary of each other and genuinely would make a great double feature on a movie night. So kudos, good shot.
Completely agree.
I'm still mad, but I think I do agree. It's a good match. Cause I know you said you're like, I didn't want to pull this one out yet, but
yeah, I was trying to think of a vampire movie that had that value, right? And I feel like the acting chops that the Wolf brings, it's just I had to throw something out there that had just as good actors.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, this will probably get brought up later again, don't like Tom Cruise. I mean, I'm not a huge Tom Cruise person, right? I'm not like a Tom Cruise guy, but when I watch Interview, I'm not thinking about him at all.
True, yeah.
It's weird. He's very good at being the character and making him and his outside everything disappear for me.
Well, and I grew up on Anne Rice, and I'm a big fan of the stories. I'm not actually a huge fan of the way Anne Rice wrote, because she would spend like 12 pages talking about a leaf falling from a tree, and I'm like, oh my God, get to the point. But the storylines themselves were really good, and that's what kept you kind of going through all of that. But I do like the emo brooding version of Lestat as opposed to this like silly crazy one. Like I like the Lestat from Queen of the Damned. That's like my favorite interpretation of him because he's just a little more edgy, a little more like, you know, I don't know. Like I saw that movie at like in my vampire phase, so it just always like but yeah, no, I agree with you. I think when I watch it too, I'm not going ugh, Tom Cruise. Like I'm able to just kind of move past that and just watch it as it is. I agree with that.
Yeah. All right. So before we get into like breaking each film down as far as what we thought each little section, how do you think Michelle Pfeiffer's character ends up, and again, spoilers, ends up being a werewolf?
How?
Yeah, because she doesn't get bit, scratched.
I assumed, so I had two thoughts on that. I assumed that she got bit or scratched when they were fighting.
Okay.
But my other thought was, is this like lycanthropy is like an STD because they slept together, right? And now she's like a werewolf. So it's like
that's what I was thinking. I'm like, that's basically all they left us with, really, because they didn't make it clear.
They didn't. There was no focus on like a mark or anything really. Yeah. And I mean, that's really all I can think of is that bodily fluids, because that's what happens when you're bitten, right?
Yeah.
Bodily fluid, you know.
Maybe I wanted to see her as a werewolf. Because I was curious because they made them look kind of interesting. Like I feel like towards the end of the film, they had Jack Nicholson really wolf out. Like towards the middle, you're like, okay, is this even? But then
he's just got weird eyes. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
So I thought, I don't know, I would liked to seen that instead of just seeing her eyes at the very end and knowing, oh shit, okay, she turned too. But I mean, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking that one night in the hotel room.
It has to be, right? Like, because to your point, they don't show anything. I mean, there's a scuffle of sorts. Yeah. But that's more like rapey than like bitey and scratchy, you know. Right? So I don't know if it's like, I guess that really would be the only way, huh? Like,
and what's up with James Spader just being such a creep? Like, I don't know what it is about him. Right? There's something about his face though, where it just there's something about him that just like it just has a creepy, weird, gross, stay away from me vibe. Like I'm just like, ah.
Yeah, he is like that in everything I've ever seen him in. He's like that in like the 80s movies I've seen him in. Like he exudes, please don't come any closer to me. Like, and he really leaned into it in this role because like he goes from being this like kind of small, just kind of like noisy character where he's just like runs his mouth and he's playing the game, but he seems kind of like he's a lot smaller than he's pretending to be in reality. And then he like gets there to her house, right? And he's like saying all these things and I'm like, is that supposed to be like the wolf thing? I don't know. That was kind of strange to me. But yeah, I guess it's bodily fluids were exchanged and so now she's a werewolf. Let that be a lesson to you when you sleep.
Okay. Well, let's start with scare factor. Did you think were there any parts in Wolf that made you feel like it was a scary film?
No.
No,
it's really story driven. So the wolf parts are very few and far between. I think the only thing that I would consider, and I don't even know if I would say like scary per se, but the only parts that were like, or the part rather that I thought was like, ooh, was when he eats the deer.
Yeah.
Like when he went for the deer, I was like, ooh, like that was kind of ugh. But other than that, there wasn't a lot of, I don't feel like there was a lot of scare factor in this one.
For me, it was good, stressful, and like tense moments. Like it was more of like that type of feeling throughout the film, especially when James Spader's character Stuart is going after Michelle Pfeiffer and he's trying to, catch her, and they're in the barn and there's that whole scuffle weirdness. And him just being creepy with everybody as he's like transforming into a werewolf type of thing. It just That
and this is more, I guess, from like a drama sense, but the part where he goes, like, the part where he realizes that his wife is sleeping with him. What's his name? Stuart.
yeah.
Yeah. Once he realizes that she's what is happening? Once he realizes that she's doing that and he goes over there, that was kind of intense, but it's more like a drama intense, like, oh shit,
Oh yeah.
You can jump. Go ahead. You can make it or you'll fall trying. Go ahead. That part was like a little angsty, but I think again it was probably more because it was more like a drama reaction because he like leaps up that last step. He like whoosh.
So that's what my next question was going to be. How did that strike you when you watched that this time?
I laughed, I think, this time.
Okay, I did too. I felt like it kind of it made it feel corny.
He was like, I think it was fine that he was taking it like 2 or 3 steps at a time. That was fine because even in my normal state as somebody in there, I can't do that. So like that felt superhuman to me already. But then that last little
when he did all 4s, that was rough for me to handle. Yeah,
I did laugh. I laughed. I don't know what I don't remember what my thoughts were on it initially the first time I ever watched it, but yeah, on a rewatch, I definitely giggled.
I just feel like the whole tone of the film is trying to be serious, so why throw that weirdness in there? Like we could have left that out. Yeah, right. I feel like that because that kind of kicked me out a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. So as far as the scare factor in Interview with the Vampire, how do you feel about that?
I think that Interview with the Vampire probably has more scare factor. And I think it's because of the atmosphere around them. I mean, it's not obviously like a jump scare kind of thing, or they're not like their transformation, their way they look is very fine. Like it's very basic. It's not a lot of bells and whistles, right? But I think that like the thing that it did really well or does really well is the atmosphere around it. So like when they're in like the graveyard, for example, and they meet each other for the first time, it feels very cat and mouse. It feels like you're getting closed in on, you're being pushed into the situation. And it has to do with the camera angles and the way that it's shot and the location it's shot. And then even to the scenes, like the scene where they have I'm assuming she is a prostitute, the girl that they have in the room later, the one with the lighter skinned girl he bites her and then she ends up realizing there's like blood all the way down her dress. Yeah. That is like, and then he puts her in the coffin. I was like, oh my God. I thought that part was a lot like that. There's a couple scenes in this in Interview with the Vampire that I think definitely have more of that, oh no, kind of feeling compared to Wolf, even though I think Wolf has some good moments, like, some things going on with it too. But I think Interview did it better.
Going back to that scene, that's such a mind fuck scene, right?
Yeah.
But for some reason, whenever I'm watching that, all I'm thinking is how awesome the wallpaper and the sconces and the frames and how that room is decorated. I'm like, oh my God. I love
so
the way
pretty in here.
The sets in this film are fucking amazing.
Stunning.
There's another scene where they're making an outfit for Claudia, and she's in this room with a bunch of plants, and I think the wallpaper's green, and there's just the trim around the whole ceiling to floor is like trimmed out.
Yeah. I love that scene. That's with there's all the mirrors too, right?
Right. And the outfits, so and it's just like, Jesus. For me, sorry to get off on a tangent, but for me, them letting her back out of the coffin when you're saying they put her on the table and it's like actually a coffin, they put her in there and then they let her back out and she's like freaking out, panicking, not knowing if she's alive or dead or what's happening, and they're just toying with her. It's crazy. Yeah. It's us to imagine yourself in that position in the middle of the floor with two people trying to and you're bleeding. Yeah, I couldn't imagine. So
yeah, and they're like kind of bickering too and
fucking with each other.
The stuff that like Lestat says is so like, as a human being, you're like, what the fuck? Like, it's so like listening to the things he's saying too, and you're like, what are you gonna do? You can't escape. You can't leave. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
She just wanted to have she just wanted to eat nice food and drink wine and be happy. And her night did not go according to plan. Oh,
there's definitely an anxiousness and an unease to this film.
Yeah.
Now, because I've watched this film specifically so many times, it's hard for me to really be like try to pick out the points where initially I would have been like, oh
yeah,
shit.
Same.
So yeah. As far as going back to Wolf, the gore scale, where are we hitting with that? If we had to choose how gory this film is,
I would say bloodthirsty.
bloodthirsty.
There's not a lot of blood, right?
I'm just trying to take the reflection off of this thing. Yeah. I think I would probably what did I put? I put yes, bloodthirsty as well for a werewolf film, creature feature film like this.
It's pretty mild.
You want to see the werewolf ripping limbs off and attacking ferociously and stuff like that. At least that's what I want.
I feel like they talk about the gore a lot more than they show it.
Okay.
Because they talked about like they make references to like what happened to the deer, and they talk about what happened to his wife, and they talk about it in detail, but we don't really get to see it like that. We don't get to see the details that they're talking about. So it's there conceptually, but the visuals are not there. So
okay, I would agree. As far as the gore scale on Interview, what was your opinion of that?
I would say maybe bloody and a half.
I would go with bloody.
Yeah.
So I agree with you.
Not as much blood as you would think for a vampire movie.
There were some parts that I was really shocked when Louis gets revenge and he has the Sith. Oh my God. One of my favorite all-time scenes from this film is his revenge on the Coven of Vampires in Paris. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was good.
And he's like covered in dust and his eyes are just that.
True. Yeah, that's a good scene. Yeah.
Every time I'm just like.
But I think that segment is probably the only reason that it even makes it to bloody, though. Because I feel like the rest of the blood stuff is pretty mild compared to.
What about the scene with the rat where Lestat grabs the rat and it's squirming in his hand, and then he like bites it and the blood kind of spurts out a little bit, and then he squeezes it?
Yeah.
Supposedly that was a remote control rat, and they had like a tube of blood going up his arm, but still pretty awesome. And I think the effect looked really good. Like, to me, I would have even been like, oh shit, that looks really good.
I also really liked the way I will say Lestat looks when he comes back from the dead.
Oh yeah.
He looks crazy, but I don't know if you would really, I think there's parts of it that make it seem gory, but it's really not bloody per se, but it's got some body gore and stuff going on in that scene too as well. So that's kind of why I was thinking like maybe somewhere between bloody and savage is the next one up, I think, right? So I would say bloody and a half.
When they slit his throat to kill him in the first place, I mean, his whole body kind of sucking in.
Yeah.
Did you know that was a animatronic corpse of him as he was dying on the floor?
I think you can kind of tell.
I felt like it still looked good though to me.
No, I don't mean that as a knock. I just think you can,
sure.
if you watch enough stuff, I think you can tell what's real and what's not, right? Like to some extent, unless it's just like really over the top. But yeah, I think you can tell. Now I will say younger me would not have even thought about that. Younger me would have been like, that's 100% him. Like they just killed him. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's very, but yeah, as an adult rewatching it, revisiting it, yeah, you can tell that it's not really him that's on the floor.
Okay. Transformation in Wolf. Where are you at?
Um,
Uh-oh.
well, we talk about this, I think, we both like the monster ones. So I like over the top werewolves. That's just my thing. And it's over the top with everything. Blood, transformation. I'm looking for just obscene amounts of transformation moments and crazy things that are happening and gore and body changes. I want to see all of that stuff. This didn't really have that. It starts out as the contacts. And then a little bit later, we get to see a little bit of the teeth, but it's not really until like what you were saying earlier, where they're all in the barn together, where we start really seeing any other change. And then, okay, tell me if this confused you. You know that part towards the end after we figured out, or it's been made clear that that Michelle Pfeiffer's character is a wolf. They show an animatronic full wolf in the trees for like a split second.
Really?
Yes. And I was like watching it and I was like,
I missed that.
yeah, it's weird. It's like it happens really quick, but it like zooms in and it's this full on wolf. You can tell it's not a real wolf. It looks like an animatronic. And then it flashes back to her. And so I was like, what was the point of that if you didn't? Like, was that supposed to be Will's character, like Jack Nicholson, like fully changed, calling to her? Like, what the hell was the point of that? And so, because they seem to be trying to make it so minimalistic, it was very almost Wolfman. I mean, really, the storyline is definitely Wolfman, right? Like, as far as the love story and the guy coming and changing and going through all these life things, but lots of parallels. But it was super minimal. It just was fuzzes on their faces. And like he first starts to see hair on the around the bite, which actually I thought was kind of neat. I like that concept. That like it like spreads. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like there really wasn't a lot to it until towards the end. And I'm not super into the human wolf hybrid looking things like that. But I mean, I think effect wise, I think it looked good. But it was kind of like it. I wasn't sure. I'd forgotten about like how they looked at the end because I was like, okay, did they not ever actually change? I can't remember. And they kind of go through the same thing of like, oh, it hurts, and he's like fighting it off. But I don't know, kind of different compared to other werewolf transformations.
Agreed.
Yeah.
For me, it left me wanting more, and that's kind of like, I don't know. Would you rather want more from it, or would you rather it go too far and look stupid, and then you're almost wishing they would have held back because of budget reasons or whatever reasons?
Yeah.
But supposedly Rick Baker was the one that was supervising the makeup
Yeah.
for this film. And he said that he was heavily inspired by Jack Pierce's work in Werewolf of London, 1935. So, yeah, right?
I would not have guessed that.
See, when I first saw this film, or not first saw it, but when I was rewatching it for this, you see a scene where he turns back and he has that whole look from The Curse of the Werewolf that came out in 1961, where it's like this underbite fangs look where it's coming out underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it made me think of initially. But then going back and looking at some pictures, because I still haven't seen the original Werewolf of London film. So
Okay. I was like the original. I got you.
Well, yeah, it's not like you know what I'm saying. So
Yes, I
it
do.
should be so.
I didn't for a second, and I was like, wait a second, what? But I'm with you now. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed because I guess I still wouldn't have guessed that. I wouldn't have thought that would have been like an inspiration given the way that this was. And what's true is it works. I mean, it very much plays into the whole the animal inside you, but like you're still you. It's just like this smaller portion. It's much more human than monster, I guess, but like enough of it. I don't know. It was fine. I think it worked for the story, and what's probably true is they probably recognized their limitations on what they could or couldn't do, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's smart filmmaking. It's smart filmmaking to know your limitations and know, like you said, if we amplify this, if we try to do something else, it's going to look ridiculous and nobody's going to like it. Versus if we just stick to this, we know we can do this. This is easier. It's cheaper. We can handle it. Because it's that's a look we could do ourselves. Like, that's not even that complicated. So
they spent their budget on Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Having him in there, that must have been like the most expensive thing. It had to have been. So,
yeah.
So practical effects in this film you feel are
Pretty good.
Decent?
Yeah, I think they're pretty good. I felt like the movie has aged pretty well in that regard. Like, I didn't feel like anything looked, other than the jump, I don't think anything looked cheesy or anything like that. I think the little bit of gore that we get, the way that they look when they're transforming, or they're going through like the stages of the change and stuff, I thought looked fine. It's I mean, I honestly, it's because it still looks really good even in 2024.
What about the weird wolves that are like standing on the snow or in the snow? They had it in the beginning when he first gets bit, and then in the very end they show like these dark black haired wolves, and they look like they have human eyes. Now, do you have any input on that? Because I thought it was kind of weird that they threw that in there. So do they completely change into a full wolf form like that?
That's why I was wondering about the one at the end.
Right?
Is it like a slow like thing where it just takes time? Because when he first gets bit, he feels, rejuvenated. He's got energy. He's got some things, some drives back. He's like taking charge, like he's feeling good, right? And then over time, it's the eyes, the teeth, the body hair, the growling, the lack of control. So maybe, like, I think it's weird to not have the main characters look like that, though.
Yeah.
As like a focal point, because we're left to go, okay, well, was that him at the end? Is that supposed to be? Because I think that's why I think the one they show at the end, or close to the end, when they're showing her back and forth, I think is supposed to be connected to the ones we see at the beginning, but it seemed very confusing to me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I was a little bit thrown off by that. But as same with you, I agree the practical effects were decent. Even some of the fight scenes and stuff, even though the choreography seemed a little bit, it sold it for me, and I feel like it's definitely passable. So it was decent.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess we're doing the transformation from like human to vampire in Interview with the Vampire, and I feel like this gives us some actually good places where we can judge that. Where some of the last films that we've watched that were vampire movies, it was almost just like you're here and then you're not, and it's just like there's nothing in between. So here at least it like actually kind of walks you through it when they're having Louis change in the graveyard scene. Without me, since I need to stop talking and let you give your opinion.
No, I think one of the things that strengthens this basic concept of what they look like when they're turned into vampires is that they maintain a lot of that look when they're not in the middle of being a vampire, right? Like, so the veins, the eye color, there's a very like they look like themselves, right? There's not like a hard definition, like, oh, I look this way and then I change. And so, yeah, and it was cool. I like vampire stories that dive into the concept of a change, because I do think there's a lot of vampire lore and a lot of vampire movies and stuff that kind of skip it. It's like, oh, it's just, then they're vampire. And it's like, yeah, but was it painful? Like, what was it like waking up for the first time? Did you feel, and to your point, this does that really well, because he talks about what he can hear and see and how he feels, and we watch it from one moment to the next. And I think that makes the simplicity of the look even stronger in the film, because you're getting all of that back, that behind the scenes of like, oh, this is what this felt like and this is how we got here. Whereas, like you said, the other ones we've been talking about, it's boom and boom, like it's no. So yeah, I love that about this. I think it's really smart. And I also think too, it really does bring you, I think, closer to the character that you're watching go through it. When you get to see the change versus like they're just human and then they're not anymore. It's a lot more engaging. Like, it just keeps my attention a lot better, because then you're like, okay, like we just watched them go through this thing. It just feels like a bonding moment, as a viewer with the characters.
Yeah.
Or character.
Okay. Just before I give my complete opinion on that, all the actors playing vampires were required to hang upside down for 30 minutes at a time during makeup. This would force all the blood from their bodies to rush to their heads, causing the blood vessels in their faces to bulge. The makeup artist would then trace over the swollen veins, creating an eerie, translucent skinned look. Unfortunately for the actors, they would have to repeat the process several times over, as the blood would quickly drain from their heads. This in part accounts for the lengthy makeup process.
That's crazy.
Right? I thought that was kind of crazy. I was just like, I would hate to be like upside down for half an hour, multiple times. I'm like wondering how that would make you like. I'm uber a baby when it comes to headaches, so I couldn't imagine like, and then having to go act out a scene and remember lines and stuff, feeling like shit. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, kudos to them for committing to the process, right? But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm I'm a headache sufferer, and there's no way. Like,
Right?
even like when and I'm like, been like being tilted over is a headache trigger. There's no way.
So for me, I liked the contacts. I liked the veins and the pale skin, the outfits that fit with the time period.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that sold it for me. The fact that, like you said, it walks you through the process, and it's like Lestat is explaining to Louis himself as his body's dying, and how Louis explaining how he's seeing stuff that's like statues moving that aren't moving, and
so cool.
Right. So to me, yeah, it just makes you feel like you're more involved for sure, and it just totally just sold it more. Like, it makes you a part of the transformation instead of the transformation. Even just watching it, you're like a part of it almost. So you're just like, oh my god. So yes, to me, that was done amazingly.
Yeah, and it's even too like when Lestat comes back and he's been like living off alligators, so he's like reptilian looking, and like they really took time to focus on the way the body works once vampirism has taken over. And we see it with Louis, we see it with Claudia, and then we see it in a different way with Lestat when he's in the process of coming back and healing. Like, because he looks wild. Like, when he comes back and then he's talking about the alligators and the things, and you're just like, oh God, like, like that part was it, just like the way that he looks and talking about how eating those things affected the way that I don't know. I thought that was really good too.
I think that Louis looks creepiest during the times when they're showing him in the interview itself. Like, I don't know what it is, but he's not, I guess, as vibrant, maybe.
Yeah, I also think we're getting a more matured version of him.
Yes.
At that state of the story, or at that point of the story. And so, like, when we see him in the earlier, he's still like baby vampire. It's like, and I know like Brad Pitt's got controversy around him pretty much like all the time, right? But I think he's such a phenomenal actor. Like, he nails like every role I've ever seen him in. I was like I loved it. And this is no exception. Like, he did a really great job of going from this tormented, bit of a whiner, right? And then into this, like, I'm still tortured, but I've kind of accepted it. So meh, you know, like he kind of just is very good at flip-flopping between. And I think that adds to him being more menacing in the interview. Totally agree with that.
Oh yeah. His whole demeanor throughout that intro scene of the film is what kind of like, for me, that was the hook.
No,
like
for sure.
The fact that he, you know, when he says, "Let me turn on the light," and he just like appears there.
Oh, so good.
And Christian Slater's freaking out. Ah, God. I can feel like I could watch just that scene alone on repeat because I love that scene.
Yeah, it's a good one for sure.
All right. So acting, going back to Wolf, the acting. How do we feel about the acting?
Oh, I loved it. I mean,
right?
I think some of the side characters aren't super memorable performance-wise, which is fine. But like even his little his secretary, I loved her.
Oh,
like
I love
even
her. Yeah.
even down to like stuff like that. So you've got Spader, Pfeiffer, Nichols, and then whoever, I don't know who plays the secretary, but she was great. Like that part where she's like, he sounds like he's 100 years old. If you're canceling the meeting, you have to do it yourself. Like she was just very personable, and I just really loved her. But I think all of the characters, the main characters that we see often, all feel very lived in. They feel very real. Like, and I think that, you know, Jack Nicholson playing like this whole, like the way he starts, like the character we meet when we meet him, and then this changeover again, like kind of what I was saying about being Brad Pitt playing the two different versions of Louis. But yeah, like he nailed that switch over, because he goes from being this like kind of whatever person to like more like when he goes into the office the next day after he's fired and stuff, and he just like starts spouting shit off, and he's like scheming to get his job, like all this stuff, and she's just like, wow, like, you know, like I just thought all of that was really good. I don't think Michelle Pfeiffer can do anything wrong, like ever. You know what I mean?
Is this since Catwoman, or is there something else that makes you feel this way?
It's mostly Catwoman. It's also Dangerous Minds. I love that movie. It's not horror, but it's such a good movie. And yeah, I just love her. I mean, a lot of it is because she was Catwoman, but I'm a huge Batman fan, and Catwoman is like the only anti-hero I allow to exist in my brain, because I don't like anti-heroes. Like I don't like Deadpool. I don't like the other ones that are like that. But I love Catwoman, and I love Selina's story. And Michelle Pfeiffer made that role her bitch. Like she killed it. And you know that part where, this is the last thing about Catwoman. You asked, so this is your fault. Everybody blame Albert in the comments. But like, you know that part where she takes the whip and she hits the heads off. Do you know that she did that shit in one take?
I believe it.
She's a queen. Like I love her. And so, and I love her character in this too. I'll segue back over. I love her character in this too, because she's very like commanding, like in general, like, and I love that she's like super defiant, and she's like trying to stick by him, even though she, I think from the very beginning, knows that there's a lot more to what's going on, even before he tells her. And there's just like, you know, like when the detective shows up and she's like, no, he was here with me all night. And you can check the receipts, basically. She's like, you know, whatever. And I love her whole like thing. So when she gets the wolf eyes later and she's just like walking out, you're just like, yeah, I dig it. Like I'm here for it. It's a powerful thing. Like I loved it. She was phenomenal. And Spader did what he was supposed to do. He creeped everybody out and made me uncomfortable.
That's what I was going to say. Spader was good at making you hate him. And yeah, I mean, as much as I hate that character, that's what his job was. His job was to make you feel that way. So he did a really good job at that.
Yeah.
So
when the character Will peed on his shoes, I was laughing. I was like, he just like stood there for a second. There's like a hesitation and moving away. I was like, what are you doing?
Right.
It was great. He's like, oh, and Marky, I love the lines in this. Jack Nicholson plays crazy so well. He's like, oh, I was just marking my territory and you got in the way.
He plays so like comfortable, whatever, doing crazy shit. And that's why I love Jack Nicholson. And yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's true. And yeah, the acting on this the acting in this rather is so good. I don't have a single complaint about the acting.
Oh, for sure. I don't know if anybody else could have pulled it off.
No.
Not in this in this caliber, anyways.
No, it would have been silly, I
Right?
think, if it had been somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So did you know? Fun fact: Jack Nicholson had been trying to get this movie made with his friend, screenwriter, and associate producer Jim Harrison for 12 years. I just think of what we would have been had we had a younger Jack Nicholson play the Wolfman type. But in doing all my research, a lot of times when they refer to the werewolf creature, they refer to it as a demon wolf, not necessarily a werewolf. So part of me wonders if that's why yeah.
And there's a part in the movie where he says that.
Is it the shaman type guy that he goes to?
It's before then. He's on the phone with that guy that had the tequila on his breath, and he's like, "Hey,
Oh yeah.
I need to look up something about wolves." And he's like, "Okay." He was like wolf possession. He was like, "What do you mean? Like demonic possession, but wolves?" And I didn't think anything else about it until you said that just now, because I was like, "That's a weird thing to say."
Right?
And then, like, I feel like a normal person would be like, "I'm probably a werewolf." Like, you know, he's like, "No, like I'm definitely possessed by a wolf." And I was like, that's weird. But it doesn't come back up like in the same way. So I was like, okay, maybe it didn't mean anything. And then you said that. That's a good point. I guess that's what it was supposed to be.
Okay. So what did you feel, not to switch over too quick, but are we ready to go to acting in Interview? Yeah? Okay, how did you feel about the acting in Interview with the Vampire?
Yeah. It's the only movie where Kirsten Dunst acts at all.
Oh, okay.
She's like not good in anything else, but I loved her as Claudia.
To me, her acting in this was like, when I watch her do that scene, when most scenes in this film, I'm just like,
Yeah.
I
Oh
think
my God. When
if
they
I
find
were,
the lady in the bed,
oh yeah, right?
and she's just
Fucking
so
amazing.
like,
Yeah, throwing a fit. And I think she was 11 years old at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
Holy shit. How does
she did an amazing job.
a child that age be able to act like that? Oh my God.
Yeah, because, and I'm sure you know this because we're both in the horror genre, but like kid acting can ruin a film. Like it can
Oh
straight
yeah.
ruin a film. It can ruin a series, Walking Dead. It can ruin movies. Like it's a big deal. And so she's a standout. She's a little star in this. Like she did such a great job. And she went, because she only plays the sick for like a short period of time. But then she's the little bratty vampire kid, and she did so great at it. She really did. And then she has these like, because she addresses the fact that like she'll never grow up like the woman in the window, and she's like watching her, and she's like talking about how she'll never have that, and she'll never look like that, and she'll never all these things. And the way that she discusses it is so like existential, but in the mind of, or as the words of a small child. And so it's just very like she hit it out of the park. She did a great job.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I mean, obviously, like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt did a phenomenal job too. And Christian Slater doesn't have like a huge role. I mean, he's obviously the interviewer, right? But he's not on camera that often, and he's the same in everything. He's just Christian Slater. So, but yeah, super strong acting. Super. Again, I don't think I have any complaints on the acting front.
So, another little fun tidbit fact. This film is dedicated to River Phoenix, who was originally going to portray Daniel Malloy in the film, the guy that's doing the interviewing. So he tragically died 4 weeks before he was to film the scenes, and the role went to Christian Slater. There's a dedication to Phoenix after the film's credits end. So I
didn't know that.
That was kind of a trip when I saw that too. I was like, because I feel like Christian Slater did a really good job, and it was kind of I want to say that this movie came out kind of before a lot of these actors were big. Like I know a lot of these, like probably Tom Cruise was probably a decent big
Yeah,
time
because
actor at that point.
yeah.
But I feel like most of these other people, maybe not so much. Even Brad Pitt. I mean, God,
Antonio Banderas maybe was a little bit bigger, right? But yeah, otherwise,
we had yeah, there's so many good actors, right? It's just like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
I used to want like I really there's a whole book in the Vampire Chronicles about Armand, the vampire that Antonio Banderas plays, and I'm like I would have loved to have seen like another movie about him.
Yeah.
Because his story is so interesting and there's so like there's a lot of it just would have been really cool to see. But yeah, I mean it is right before the boom of for a lot of them early 90s, yeah, but they did such a good job.
Well, for him, he's also the oldest vampire, right? So he's going to have the most history to go off of, you would assume.
Yes.
Going back to Tom Cruise as Lestat, I really liked the way that him and Louis's character, or Brad Pitt's character Louis, went back and forth, and they were almost antagonizing each other. To me, that brought another level of like, this is a serious tone movie, but they're giving it, and it feels like a genuine relationship between two people that have known each other for a long time, and two people that are kind of like, they get irritated, but they kind of care about each other, but they still are gonna like jab. And the way that Tom Cruise jabs at Brad Pitt this entire time, that to me was nuts.
They're like an old married couple. So Anne Rice's books have a lot of queer undertones, and then she found God and she stopped writing about vampires or whatever, right? But
I didn't know any of that.
The new show really leans into that side of it because I think the undertones for their relationship is there the entire time. It's just whether you want to acknowledge them or not. But their like fluidity with things is very present in the film. And so their dynamic is definitely old married couple. Like we had this beautiful start together and we were doing so great. And now I hate you, but I don't want you to go anywhere, but I can't stand you. But also let's do everything together. It's very like, yeah, it's great. And they had phenomenal chemistry for that style of relationship on camera. And even when they add in Claudia, what she adds to that, was even crazier. Like it just they all three like played very, very well together. But the two guys in particular, yeah, they did a really good job of feeling like what it would feel like to be around people who had been together for that long. Like
no, I loved that part. Watching them banter back and forth was nuts to me. I loved it. So an odd thing about, or a tidbit fact again, due to them not getting along during filming, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt refused to work with each other ever again. Now, supposedly, Tom Cruise said something about Brad Pitt smelling kind of like he needed to put deodorant on or something. So I don't know how far that goes back or deep, but so there's some weirdness there.
Well, it didn't help because Brad Pitt's still pretty popular, and everybody thinks Tom Cruise is a crazy whack job. So.
Yeah,
him and his Scientology craziness, like people immediately think crazy. There's like a Family Guy skit about him being crazy.
There's a lot of skits and stuff about him.
Yeah, when he went crazy on, was it Oprah, about Katie Holmes? Where he's like bouncing off the couch, like, or maybe it was a chair where he's like, he looked like he was on drugs. He is like just completely out of his mind. Yeah, that's funny though. I wouldn't have guessed that they didn't get along. It seemed friendly,
right? Know? In the behind the scenes trivia stuff that I was looking through and reading through, it said that, and I was just like, I wouldn't have thought either. They seem like they got along really well because the way the movie like
They really
plays
did.
out.
Well, I guess that's why they're called actors, right? They did a good job. Like, there's another story like that. It's not them, it's somebody else, where it was like these people had great chemistry on set, but they actually fucking hated each other. I mean, it's interesting that you can get past that and still create what they were able to create.
Right.
That's
Knowing
crazy.
how much they had to work with each other throughout the days of the shoot. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, because I'm sure they filmed for a long time. Yeah.
So going back to Wolf,
Mm-hmm.
the storyline. What did you feel about the story itself and how it moved?
I feel like I liked the story. I don't think I loved it, but I think I liked it. You know, you've got this guy who doesn't really seem like a bad guy, and this thing happens to him, and then his life is like falling apart. You know, his wife's cheating on him with that piece of shit that stole his job, and you know, and it's like he's losing, and then this kind of event, right, gives him like a boost, and then he's like able to but then it just spirals out of control, which I think is a pretty common formula for werewolf movies. It's usually like bad, pretty good for a little bit, and then like goes completely off the rails, like and so I don't mind that. I think it's a very simple story. It doesn't have a lot of complications. There's not a lot of bells and whistles, you know. It's not very
Sorry. He was getting lonely.
He looked sad for a minute. I saw his face go down. He seems happy now, though. Is he purring?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it's a fine story. I don't think I think it's very middle ground. I don't think it's not, you know, life changing, but it's not the worst, most nonsense thing I've ever seen either. So it's kind of like in the middle for me. What do you think of the story?
So to me, it was like a let's see who can fuck over who the worst. Because in the beginning, his like supposed friend is fucking his wife and then steals his job by begging the boss for it, and like to a point where the boss gives it to him. And then he gets bitten by the wolf, right? And starts to have these wolf-like characteristics, and he's more outgoing, and he can hear stuff and see stuff better, and he doesn't even need to wear glasses anymore. So then he ends up getting mad at his boss, gets revenge on his friend, takes his job back, ends up fucking the boss's daughter, and it's just right. And it's just like it was pretty extreme in that point where it was just like a back and forth revenge type thing, and who can one up the other guy. And it just kind of was like to the point where like, oh my God, dude. I mean,
it's a drama.
Yeah. But it was also like, so it's like, what the fuck? Like, what are we doing? Come on, guys. Like, holy shit. I mean, so yeah, it was a lot. And even the fact that the boss I felt like they didn't really show that he was upset at all about the daughter being with Jack Nicholson, which I thought was odd. Like, right? I mean, shouldn't there have been a little bit more like, hey, I don't want you dating this weird guy that I work with or that's under me at work. Like, it just seems kind of like a bad, maybe not.
Because there's the scene when he's at their house and the dad's like makes his little statement or whatever. But that's it, right? That's the only time I think it comes up.
Yeah, it seemed like it was kind of just like brushed under the rug, and it was just like he didn't really care that Jack Nicholson was kind of talking, and I thought that was strange.
Yeah, he was just kind of like, well, she's gonna do whatever she wants anyway, so I guess whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't really get addressed again after that, I don't think.
Nope. But overall, I liked the story. I thought it was decent. I thought it was pretty straightforward, and it made for more of a, like, had there not been the cheating and the backstabbing and the betrayal type stuff going on, I don't know if it would have been it wouldn't have moved as fast, and it would have been.
I agree.
It would have been a little bit more dry for sure.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah, it definitely would have felt like it was dragging, and you would have probably been looking at your phone a lot more and being like, "Oh my god, how long is this?" Like, it does keep you intrigued. Yeah. No, I agree.
So, what would you score this film? 1 out of 10. We're talking about Wolf.
Yeah.
What are you
Um,
scoring it?
don't use the cute one. This isn't this little he is it looks like his little eyes go down like he's got like these he's cute. His little ears are pointed.
I love his ripped little
I know, it's so
shirt too.
cute. I
Yeah.
love it.
And it
Very
feels
cute.
durable too. That's what's weird about
It
this.
looks a little tough, yeah.
It feel like whatever the material is that they use. Anyways, I'm gonna put
Yeah.
it down.
Well made.
Yes.
Yeah. What would I score it? Out of 10. I really like this movie. I'm trying to think though, because I also have to do the same thing for interviews. I got to make sure,
Exactly.
like,
This
you
is
know,
tough. It's not.
it's hard. I would give. I'm going to give Wolf. I'm just going to stick with this. I'm going to give Wolf a 7.5.
Ooh, shit. Okay. I was gonna go 6.5, 7. I have 7 out of 10 written down.
Okay, so we're about in the same lane.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
And
7. I would give it like a 7.5. I think it's definitely a movie I would rewatch. It's not like some of the others where I'm like, yeah, never again. Like,
for me it was a little cheesy, and they had some one-liners in there that were like kind of like, oh, okay, here we go. Like if you would have taken those out, it would have kept the more streamlined, serious tone, and I wouldn't have been like thrown out every once in a while, right? I felt like it was really good, and they could have just like done away with a couple little lines here,
yeah.
taken away the little leap up the stairs, and I would have been fucking sold.
That scene was so good other than that one part because like he bit him and I was like there
Yeah.
for that. I was like, cool. You know?
Exactly.
And what's funny is I didn't even think about the fact that like, oh, now he's going to be a wolf. Like, I don't think like first watch, I was like, oh, now.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. And then he showed up at the police station looking all crazy. And I was like, oh, shit. He did get bitten, didn't he? Anyway. Yeah.
All right. Well, on to Interview with the Vampire. Storyline. How'd you feel about it? I know.
Yeah. It's so good. I love the story for this. You love the story? Why are you making that face?
No, I'm like waiting to answer. Like I want to like be like,
oh,
it's
you made a face like you.
It's hard to not talk. Like it's like yeah. Anyways, go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I love the story for Interview with a Vampire. I love the concept. I love the journey, like the specific focal points of his life that we get to see, and it all flows together seamlessly. It all has a main overall point to it. It's heartbreaking. It's emotional. There's a few little glittered moments of joy throughout, but not many because they're not meant to be, right? They're very tortured creatures at this point. But no, I loved it. I think the story is great. Because again, it's very story driven. It's not super action packed. There's not like a ton of fighting and a ton of killing. It's very, these are the characters. This is the shit that they were up to during this time frame. And it works very well. Anne Rice's ability to write, because this is pretty close to the book as far as the main plot points and stuff. I think just is very talented in being able to compose a full story with pieces broken up like that, which I don't always think is easy to do. And no, I loved it. I don't have a single complaint about the story. It's perfect to me.
For me, it felt like it took you on an adventure. Like from start to finish, it hooks you in with that interview scene with them in the hotel room or that corner loft room. And then like it just takes you on a ride, and it's just like you're going through different time periods. And man, I don't know, it sells it on each point with the sets, with the acting, with even the score for me was amazing. Like the music choices for this, it's just that eerie little background
It's
sound.
perfect.
It just hits you like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you score this film? I know. This is hard for me. This film is in my top 5 horror films of all time. So, like as far as what I like, my likes and needs and all that from a movie, right? So,
Yeah.
it's very hard for me to start rating stuff when it's up there for me. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, this film was iconic. It was like a part of my personality when I was growing up, and it remains iconic. And it's always hard to rate things that feel that way.
Yeah.
That the film themselves have a history with you as the viewer. It's always harder to do those, like super hard. That's like when people want to tell, like, oh, what do you like? Let's talk about the Blair Witch. And I'm like, it's perfect. Don't ask me any questions. Like, I don't have, it's hard. For the meaningful ones. And this was a very big part of my life when I was in high school, especially. Again, vampire phase. And this was like the vampire movie, right? So anyway, but it is not in a top list of films for me. Not in a, I mean, maybe not a top 5 for sure. I think my top 5 horror movies are probably all found footage movies. I'm stalling. I don't know what to rate it. I'm gonna rate it. I don't know. I'm gonna give it 8.5. No, yeah, 8.5. I'll give it 8.5.
Damn. That is what I have written down. I have 8.5 written down. Yeah.
We have been so in it this time.
Yeah. 8.5 out of 10.
Nice.
And man, to me, it's such a good film. It brings it on every single level. The only thing where I feel like it might be not hitting on, if I had to be judgmental, would be the scare factor. And that's what you go into a horror movie for. You want to have that little bit of scary creepiness, which, who knows, the first time I saw this back when I was a kid,
Definitely
it might have hit me a little bit, but still not enough to where it's like has that fucked up feeling, you know what I mean? So that to me would be the only thing it's missing, is it's a little bit too soft. But everything else, I mean, I fucking love this movie so much.
So good. Yeah.
So,
and I think too, like pretty early, at least in our lifetimes, vampires became very romanticized. And I think that is what it contributes a little bit to the softness. Like I didn't get a scary vampire again until 30 Days of Night. And those vampires are fucking scary. Like, so, but with these vampires, there is that air of danger. There's that tension, that stuff that builds. But you're right. It's very, they're so pretty and poor them. And it's very like, it's a completely different, energy, as how I feel as a human towards, these monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, I feel like it's obvious which one won out here, guys. But I mean, if we have to actually clarify a winner, Angel.
It's Stupid Interview with the Vampire. Albert wins. I would like to say he cheated, but this was a fair play because this lined up so well with Wolf. Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, it's really close.
Yeah.
But Wolf as a film definitely has more issues than Interview with the Vampire does. So the vampires haven't won very many, so it's fine that they won this one.
I agree.
Yeah, so definitely Interview with the Vampire wins this one. That's our first big one, right? That's our first like blockbuster movie that we've discussed, right? We haven't talked about a big one.
Well, I think Wolf is still a pretty decent movie. Like as far as big movie, I thought it was a pretty. Wasn't it a
Was it super
blockbuster as well?
popular? I feel like nobody talks about that movie.
Yeah, I think it's because they don't really go into full wolf form, if I had to guess. But
Yeah.
again, seeing as how they're trying to mimic the Werewolf of London from the 30s, I mean, plus you have Jack Nicholson's face, and I feel like they probably didn't want to cover that up. They kind of had.
He already looks like a wolf
Right.
with the eyebrows and the hair.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. I agree.
All right.
But, well,
It's stressing me out because I'm like trying to think of my next werewolf choice right now.
oh yeah, you pick where. Yeah, it's your turn to pick the werewolf. I'm gonna pull out some crazy ass vampire movie too, just to pay you back for this one.
I'm trying to decide whether to go comedy horror or serious horror right now. Because there's a couple good comedy horror werewolf films and vampire films for that matter that I really I would like to check out too for that. So, all right.
Yeah. No. Cool. Well, I think that's all we have for this episode of Cursed Beings. As always, Albert's links where you can find him are in the description below. If you want really cool merch with our logo that Albert designed, link for that is also in the description. And yeah, we'll be back with another werewolf and vampire soon. And thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We hope you have a good rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. We will see you in the next one.